Ultimate Spider-Man just hit the 6-issue mark, and that basically makes up a $40 trade paperback from Marvel Comics. So, let's talk about the first volume of Ultimate Spider-Man by Jonathan Hickman and Marco Sheta. Hey, what's going on, guys? Now, the last time I talked about this book, or really any Spider-Man content, was 6 months ago. And if you want to check that video out, you can. I still have it up. But the overall gist was that Spider-Man as a character, like 616 Peter Parker in particular, main universe, original formula Coca-Cola, version 1.962 is just fundamentally broken. He has been since the mid-90s with the Clone Saga. There have been some good stories here and there. The JMS run was pretty good up until issue 500. Everything after that, your mileage may vary. There have been some pretty good OGNs. I like Family Business more than most people. Spider-Man Fever is really underrated. I really like Chip Zdarsky's run on Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. I think that book was a lot of fun. And I like the current Spider-Man series, with Peter and Miles sharing that book as dual protagonists by Greg Weisman and Humberto Ramos. That book's been a lot of fun so far. In fact, I don't know why Marvel didn't go ahead and make this, like, way sooner. So, it's not that nobody can do anything right with this character, but he does feel very directionless, and I think One More Day was the final nail in the coffin for any sort of positive forward momentum with Peter Parker, and I think a lot of comic book readers have sensed that. That's why whenever Marvel announces a new Spider-Man anything, Spider-Man fans, they just start foaming at the mouth and hail whatever shiny new comic book or movie, or TV show, or video game as the thing that's going to fix Spider-Man. And the new Ultimate Spider-Man series was no different. And it's funny, because there were so many people waving palm leaves who clearly had no idea as to what they were preemptively worshipping, because 90% of the Hickman's going to save Spider-Man, like that crowd didn't care to look into the larger context of the Ultimate Universe or read Ultimate Invasion, which I don't know how you read the new Ultimate Spider-Man book without having read Ultimate Invasion. I mean, you can, you just gotta be fucking lost. And for the first, 3 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man, it was very evident that nobody read Ultimate Invasion or the Ultimate Universe one-shot, because they were like, why is Tony Stark a teenager? How is Gwen Stacy alive? Why is New York no longer part of the United States of America?
Hey yo, what the fuck?
It's an alternate universe. Very similar to DC's Flashpoint, but way cooler. Way cooler. And it's not even a competition. So, the new Ultimate Universe, Earth 6160, basically starts out as a fairly traditional Marvel Universe. There's not a lot of difference between it and the classic 616 Marvel Universe, but because the maker interjects himself in key historical events, the entire world just spirals into this dystopian nightmare where some classic Marvel characters are killed off, some are under the maker's control, and some of them never got the chance to become the heroes or villains they were meant to be. And Spider-Man is in that last category. And Hickman and Sheta do a lot in terms of exploring this weird perversion of the Spider-Man mythology, while also somehow making this book feel like classic Spider-Man in a way that nothing's really felt like classic Spider-Man in a long time. This book is definitely trading off of the reader's expectations of Spider-Man comics and lore and classic Spider-Man tropes and characterizations, and actively subverting all of those expectations in a way that takes full advantage of the alternate history Marvel Universe around it. Here, Peter Parker is 35 years old. He's married to MJ, and they have 2 kids, Richard and May. And despite living the ideal post-American nuclear family dream with a steady career and a couple of kids and hitting the MILF jackpot, Peter still feels incomplete. Like, there's a piece of him that's just missing, and he can't quite put his finger on it. And in the first issue, Tony Stark airdrops a Spider-Man costume and a radioactive spider in Peter's living room at like 3 in the morning, and gives him the rundown about the Maker and how 20 years ago Peter was supposed to be one of the world's greatest superheroes, and the Maker altered his destiny. So now, Tony and his team, which would later become the Ultimates, are giving these heroes their lives back, which is followed up on in the Ultimates book. Weirdly enough, after reading that first issue, I think they should be called the Avengers. Like, the name is just more thematically fitting. Also, the original Ultimates were called the Ultimates as a commentary on how America views itself, and there's no America here in this universe. I don't know. That's a whole tangent in and of itself. I will say, American comics being where they are right now, and sufficient evidence pointing to a lot of editors just not editing, the coordination of having issue 1 of Ultimates release after issue 6 of Ultimate Spider-Man was a really cool detail, because Ultimate Spider-Man takes place in real time, and Tony sends Peter his little superhero care package from 6 months in the future. I just thought that was great attention to detail, but now I'm getting sidetracked. So, Peter jumps to the opportunity to be a superhero. This is the exact thing that he's been missing from his life. Swinging around the city at 100 miles per hour, helping people, and getting into fistfights with bad guys. And in a way, it reads like Hickman bringing back this idea of Peter Parker being an adrenaline junkie, which I think is a solid motivation for a mid-30s Peter Parker living a quiet life with a family, because the lesson of responsibility has already been learned. He is a husband. He is a father. He has a stable job. Hickman is writing a Peter Parker with a very different personal history than traditional Peter Parker. He doesn't have compounding childhood into adolescent trauma with the death of his parents, and the death of Uncle Ben, the death of Betty Brant's brother, being targeted by the mob since age 15, the death of Gwen Stacy and George Stacy. Like, this is a Peter Parker who doesn't have a lot of that baggage. So watching him make the choice to become Spider-Man at this particular stage of his life is very interesting to me. And I love his approach, because he's just acting like a traditional comic book superhero, you know, swinging around, waiting for something to happen in a world that's pretty tightly knit and controlled by the Maker's Illuminati. And that's where we get the flip side of Spider-Man. You know, that's where we get Harry Osborn as the Green Goblin. And I think he's a great counter for Peter, because so far, this is not a typical Hickman book, or much rather, it is, but just through the eyes of Spider-Man. And Harry Osborn in this is kind of more along the lines of a traditional protagonist in a Hickman story. Or much rather, Harry likes to think that he is a Hickman-type protagonist. So, I think it's issue 5 we get Harry's backstory. But we see Norman and Emily for a little bit. And in the 3 panels we get of Norman Osborn, he's just your average take on the character. Rich asshole who treats his son like absolute shit. And Norman and Harry have a phone call where Norman is doing the usual Norman thing, telling Harry that he ain't shit, he ain't ever gonna be shit, and the worst day of his life was when Harry was born. You know, the usual. And that is the last conversation that they have before the Stark satellite is hacked by the Illuminati, and at 9/11's New York. Well, I guess 11/1, because the Ultimate Universe one-shot released on November 1st, so 11/1, never forget. Anyways, Norman was at ground zero, so Harry is given the company after his father's demise, and he meets with the Kingpin, who is in charge of New York and some of the other East Coast territory of the former United States, and he's making his way to take Captain Britain's job as governor of the region, I think. This part ties into some of the other Ultimate Universe stuff that's going on, but I know that Fisk is trying to make a power play, but he can only do that if he sells his remaining shares of Stark Industries to Oscorp. And he kind of twists Harry's arm around his back to do it, but Harry absorbs what's left of Stark Industries, and he comes across a bunch of Iron Man armor and files about the Illuminati. And Harry decides that he's going to be a superhero and take the bad guys down from the inside. And he's got all this tech, he's well put together, he's confident, he's got targets, he's got a plan, he's ruthless at times. There's a point where he tortures Bullseye for information, and he's very cold and calculated. Like, compared to Peter, he's sophisticated, and he's got everything figured out. Ordinarily, as far as Hickman comics go, Harry should be the protagonist of this book. And I think that gives him and Peter an interesting dynamic, especially when they start working together and put their feet to the fire. There's a fantastic moment in issue 6 where Peter and Harry have this all-out, full frontal, full force assaults on the Kingpin's penthouse, and we've had 5 issues of build-up comparing Peter and Harry respectively, and Peter's this lovable, bumbling Dorcas, and Harry is this Iron Man, Batman, John Wick badass. But as soon as they're face to face with the Kingpin, an actual challenge, Harry is made well aware of the fact that he is not that guy. But Peter is. And again, I love their dynamic, and I'm very interested in seeing where they go from here. Granted, why is the costume he designed Goblin inspired? Why does he use a glider and pumpkin bombs? Because let's be honest, the Goblin motif is very specific, and Hickman offers an explanation through this universe's Doc Ock, but even still, it's all just a little convenient. But I'm choosing to read it like the Miller World stuff, where it doesn't exactly make sense for Kick-Ass to take place in the same universe as Superior or Nemesis, and Miller offers an explanation for it in Big Game, but some of that shit still doesn't track. But it's that self-correcting universe concept. You know, the universe was fundamentally altered, so now it's finding constants that it recognizes in itself and putting them in play to achieve a sense of status quo. You know, like, if there's a Tony Stark, if there's a Thor, and a Captain America, and a Hank Pym, and a Janet Van Dyne, then there is an Avengers. You know, so if there's a Spider-Man, then there must be a Green Goblin. Now, that is definitely me reading into the text, but we'll see how everything unfolds in future issues. And speaking of costumes, if I had a nickel for every time Tony Stark gave Peter Parker a highly advanced superhero costume at the start of his superhero career, I'd have 2 nickels. But it's weird that it happened twice now. And I am split on the Picotech stealth suit. On the one hand, I have that thing where I don't like the idea of a super advanced Blue Beetle-esque Spider-Man. But at the same time, with the way the suit is implemented here, I don't know how else the story unfolds without it. And I really like the story that's being told with it. Because it's Stark technology, Oscorp technically owns it, so it's the reason why Harry's able to find Peter and ask him to team up. It's also how Harry finds the Shocker, because the gauntlets are also apparently Stark tech. There's a really cute sequence in issue 2, I think, where Peter's walking around his apartment and May sees him and gets scared. And in the next issue, because the suit can alter its appearance, Peter and May go through costume options and they land on the iconic SpiderMan design. Again, why is it specifically the iconic SpiderMan design? I mean, it looks cool, you know, and Marco Checchetto draws the hell out of the classic Spider-Man costume, but I don't know, self-correcting universe theory, that's what I'm gonna stick with. I also love the family stuff with Peter and MJ and the kids. Hickman does a wonderful job with the family dynamic here, And I remember feeling worried that Hickman wouldn't be the right guy for this kind of book, because he writes a lot of gritty sci-fi horror comics, like Decorum, and East of West, and S.H.I.E.L.D. I mean, shit, his run on the Avengers is really messed up, and it gets to the point where you can't even really root for any of the heroes, because, with the exception of Captain America, they're all monsters. His X-Men was a very bleak, sci-fi, Dune-esque reinvention of that corner of the Marvel Universe. But then I read the first 3 issues of this, and I was like, alright, this was the guy who wrote arguably the best run on the Fantastic Four in like 30 years. This is that Hickman. This is Fantastic Four Hickman. The family element doesn't take a back seat to the high-concept science fiction narrative. If anything, it's reversed. The family element is the story. Peter has 2 father figures in this, with Uncle Ben, who is alive, and J. Jonah Jameson, who is Ben's best friend. These are 2 old men who reject the corruption of the world around them, and they're fighting back against Wilson Fisk, which is exactly what Peter goes on to do. Peter's daughter designs his costume. MJ is the one who gives Peter the nudge to take back his life in the first place, and then later on, she's the one who gives Peter his iconic Spider-Man name. I still don't get the trophy wife complaints. I mean, it's not coming from a lot of people, it's definitely one of those vocal minority sort of things, but MJ is not a prop in this book at all. She's a successful brand manager, and it's clear that she's going to have an arc centered around her and Gwen Stacy in the next few issues. Also, MJ and Peter complement each other very well in this. I love the dynamic between them and Harry and Gwen. In fact, I think so far, issue 4 might be my favorite issue of the series. And I even like the guest artist on it too, David Messina. That issue was nothing but talking. It was the double dinner date issue. And that was the issue in particular that made me think, yeah, I don't know what the hell Marvel's talking about when they say that you can't make a midlife adult Peter Parker who's married with children interesting. Because this is the most I've cared about Spider-Man comics in a long time. And so far, 3 out of the 6 issues don't even feature Peter as Spider-Man. In fact, I don't even think Peter is in issue 5 at all. And still, it holds my interest more than anything else with the Spider-Man brand coming out of Marvel Comics right now. And I didn't even talk about the art by Marco Sheta and Matthew Wilson.
Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
I remember early on in Chip Zdarsky's run on Daredevil thinking, holy crap, Marco Sheta was born to draw Spider-Man. And here we are. His style is very gritty and it lends itself to urban environments, but there's also an eeriness to it. Like, I get why he was put on Daredevil. His art is very creepy, but it also has this kinetic energy, even in the quiet moments. Nothing feels stagnant. It always feels like there's something moving somewhere on the page, and it does heighten your anxiety a little bit, which I think is perfect for a character like Spider-Man. I don't know if Matthew Wilson was the colorist on Daredevil as well, but he looks very similar, and I like how muted the world looks. It's very dramatic. The inks are very sketchy too. I personally love the minimalist approach to the way Shishido draws the webs. Whenever Spider-Man is swinging or just perched somewhere, he's covered in webbing, and the webs look like actual spider web that you'd see in the corner of your room, and it just makes Spider-Man feel that much creepier. I just love it so much. So yeah, I got nothing else to say. I can't wait for more. I don't even buy single issues for ongoing series like that anymore, but this was one of the exceptions. Apparently, the Ultimate Sinister Six is going to be introduced in a few issues, and I can't wait for that. Now, does this book magically fix Spider-Man? Has it saved the Spider-Man brand? No. Probably not. But it is really fucking cool, and I encourage you to read it if you love Spider-Man. I want this book to sell well so we can get more of it, and that's it. That's all I got. Sorry this video is really long, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you like this video, hit the like button, share, support the channel, and if you want to see more content like this, all you gotta do is subscribe. I am the Mystical Green Beanie. Thank you for watching, and as always, until next time, take care, guys. Adios.
Charged up.